The annual fundraising gala was already in motion when I arrived at the hotel in Midtown Manhattan. I wasn't listed anywhere important that night. No name on the program. No seat near the stage. That was intentional. I had stepped back years earlier, letting the next generation carry the weight and the attention. Being present was enough. I stopped near one of the cocktail tables while scanning the room for familiar faces. Conversations overlapped. Laughter came and went. People who hadn't seen each other since the last quarter leaned in close trading updates that sounded more strategic than friendly. That was when Vanessa's voice cut through the noise. "Excuse me," she said sharply. Someone brushed past my shoulder. Then her voice again, closer this time. "Sir, can you bring another glass of red? This one's warm." I turned. Vanessa Cole stood there holding her empty glass out toward me, already looking past me as if the task had been assigned and completed. She was dressed like she belonged at the center of the room. Confident, comfortable, certain. A pause followed. Not long, but long enough. A couple of people nearby shifted their attention. Someone stopped mid-sentence. Another glanced from her face to mine, then quickly away. My son stood a few steps back. He froze, smile, half-formed eyes, searching for the fastest exit from the moment. His mouth opened, closed. Nothing came out. Vanessa noticed none of it. Her arm remained extended. "Please," she added, impatience creeping in. "We're waiting." No correction came from me, no explanation either. I took the glass, nodded once, and moved toward the bar. That seemed to satisfy her. Behind me, conversation resumed, though the tone had changed. Softer, curious. At the bar, a young server met my eyes confused when I handed him the glass. I asked for another. He didn't question it. By the time I returned, Vanessa was already speaking to someone else. The new glass landed on the table. She didn't thank me, just reached for it and kept talking, laughter spilling out at the right moments. The ease of someone who believed the hierarchy had been established. Later, the host took the stage. Applause rose as names were read aloud. The new executive lineup. Fresh titles. Forward momentum. My son's name drew a longer reaction. Pride flickered across his face. Vanessa straightened, gripping his arm, as if the introduction belonged to her as well. From where she stood, she greeted members of the board like old friends. Familiar nods, easy smiles. No hesitation. I watched without moving. My phone started vibrating before I reached the corner. Messages stacked up faster than I could read them. A former partner sent a single line asking if everything was all right. Someone from compliance forwarded a screenshot from a group chat with a laughing emoji attached. By the time the car dropped me off at the Upper East Side, the story had already found a shape. Not the truth, just a version that traveled well. I didn't respond to any of it. The apartment felt unchanged, which was the point of it. Papers stayed where I left them. Books remained unopened. I poured a glass of water and sat at the table that had become more symbolic than useful. A tablet waited there, still logged into the company portal I rarely touched. Access had never been revoked. No one thought to. Scrolling through shareholder records felt like reopening a door I had closed on purpose. Names appeared in neat rows, familiar and new mixed together. Voting percentages, advisory notes, proposed appointments. The structure had grown without me, but not away from me. Every line carried a decision I had once approved directly or by stepping aside. A text came in from my son. "Long night, heading out with Vanessa. We'll talk later." Later had become a flexible word. I stepped back outside, walking toward a bar a few blocks down, where the noise spilled into the street. Voices overlapped. Music pulsed. Near the entrance, Vanessa stood with two women, glass-raised posture relaxed in a way that suggested control rather than celebration. "Once we're married, it's official," she said, voice steady, confident. One of her friends laughed. "So you're really going to be on the board?" "That's the plan," Vanessa replied. "You don't spend years building proximity just to stay adjacent." Another voice chimed in, curious. "And his dad?" She waved a hand. "He's not relevant anymore. He stepped back ages ago. That's what happens when you don't claim your space." The words landed without effort. No malice, just accounting. I kept walking. No confrontation followed. No need. Hearing it said plainly changed the weight of the evening. What I had taken for rudeness now looked organized. The next morning brought a different kind of conversation. My son called tone casual, but rehearsed. About last night, he said, "People are sensitive right now. The company needs to look forward." "Forward doesn't require pretending," I said. A pause stretched. "Vanessa thinks the older structure slows things down," he added. "There's room for new leadership." That phrasing wasn't his. It carried borrowed edges. "I agree about growth," I said, "just not about erasure." He didn't argue. Changed the subject, asked about my week. The distance arrived without a fight. By noon, I stood outside an old law office on Madison. The sign hadn't changed, though the firm had. Marcus Bennett stepped out as I approached, coat already buttoned, expression measured like always. "Didn't expect to see you," he said. "Neither did I replied. We walked a few steps together. Traffic crawled past. He listened while I summarized the night without embellishment. "Silence is a strategy," Marcus said after a moment. "But it's not neutral. It costs someone eventually." "Sometimes it protects," I said. "Sometimes it teaches the wrong person where the line is," he answered. We stopped near the corner. He didn't ask what I planned to do. Just nodded once as if a door had been reopened by acknowledgement alone. Back home, the messages continued. A board member suggested lunch. Another sent reassurance wrapped in humor. None mentioned the name that mattered. I sat at the desk again, pulling up public records instead of internal files. Employment history, corporate registrations. Nothing alarming at first glance. Clean entries, short tenures, a pattern of exits that left little behind. This wasn't an investigation. Not yet. More like a temperature check. A call came through from my son later that evening. "Vanessa's upset," he said. "She feels judged." I didn't say anything, I replied. "That's the problem," he answered, frustration breaking through. "You make people fill in the gaps." The line went dead before I could respond. I returned to the screen, opening another tab, then another. Dates began to line up. Addresses shifted across states. Each detail alone meant nothing. Together they asked for patience. Dinner passed without notice. The water glass sat empty. Outside, the city kept its pace. Somewhere across town, conversations continued without me. I typed a name into the search bar again, slower this time, and let the page load while considering how easily assumptions travel when no one interrupts them. The browser stayed open longer than planned. One search led to another, not because I was hunting for something specific, but because patterns don't announce themselves. They accumulate. Employment records showed short stays, each ending just before a promotion would have required disclosures. Addresses changed often. Different cities. Similar timing. Nothing illegal. Just movement that left little behind. Financial ties were harder to trace, but not impossible. Small consulting fees. Temporary advisory roles. Payments routed through entities that dissolved within a year. The amounts were modest, the kind designed to avoid scrutiny. On their own, they meant nothing. Together, they suggested a rhythm. A court record surfaced late in the afternoon. Civil dispute. 10 years back. Filed by a former partner. The case closed, quickly sealed after a settlement. No verdict, no admission, just a quiet exit. The complaint mentioned misrepresentation tied to shared finances. That was it. 1 page, enough to pause. The chair creaked as I leaned back. A familiar discomfort settled in, the kind that asks whether the problem lies with the evidence or the person reading it. Digging into someone's past carries its own weight. I had avoided it for years, telling myself trust mattered more than control. That belief hadn't aged well. Memories surfaced without warning. Family dinners where my reserve was mistaken for disinterest. Birthdays marked with efficient gifts instead of speeches. The word cold had been used more than once, usually when someone wanted a reaction I didn't offer. Those moments had taught me restraint, not distance. Others never saw the difference. The phone rang. My son again. "Vanessa's been invited to the strategy sessions now," he said. "She has good instincts. That's not her role," I replied. "She's family," he said, "or will be." The line went tense. She asked about the liquidity schedule, he continued, said it would help her understand the long-term vision. "That information isn't shared casually. She didn't think you'd mind," he said, irritation creeping in. "You're not even involved anymore. That part landed harder than expected. Involvement had never been the measure. Responsibility had." "I'm still accountable," I said. For what he asked? The question lingered unanswered. Later, Marcus called. No preamble. Found something he asked. A closed case, I said. Nothing conclusive. "Conclusive is rare," he replied. "Consistent is not." He explained it plainly. Disputes that end quietly often do so because one side prefers distance over resolution. When money and intimacy overlap, the exit tends to repeat. People don't reinvent themselves as often as they claim, Marcus added. They refine. That word stuck. I pulled back after that. No more searches. No more notes. If this was turning into projection, it needed space. Stepping aside had worked before. Maybe observation would clarify what scrutiny could not. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Vanessa reached out directly, asking if I could authorize access to historical contracts. Framed as curiosity. Pitched as preparation. The request arrived through official channels CC'd to legal, wrapped in politeness. The answer was simple. No response. Her reaction followed within hours. A call to my son. Then another message, this one. Firmer. The tone shifted from collaborative to concerned, hinting at delays, lost momentum, misunderstood intentions. During a meeting later that week, she spoke with confidence, referencing projections she shouldn't have seen. My son nodded along, defending her presence when questions arose. "She's invested," he said. That matters, it did, just not the way he meant. Afterward, Marcus and I crossed paths again near his office. He listened as I described the escalation. "You're being tested," he said. "Boundaries invite that." "What happens if I keep holding them?" I asked. "Someone will try to step over," he replied. "That's how you learn why they wanted access." The delay didn't announce itself with alarms. It showed up as hesitation, emails marked urgent, a call scheduled then pushed. A partner's legal team asked for clarification that should have been routine. The request Vanessa had submitted lingered in the background, referenced more than addressed. By midweek, the transaction stalled. A deal that had taken months to line up slowed because someone noticed an inconsistency in governance disclosures. The concern wasn't dramatic, just enough to trigger caution. Compliance wanted assurance, legal wanted distance. My name surfaced in the thread not as a decision-maker but as a variable that hadn't been accounted for. Calls followed. Short ones, tight voices. "Richard, did you authorize access to those documents?" "No." "Then why was the request logged? It was submitted without approval." That explanation didn't travel far. The partner paused the process anyway, citing uncertainty around internal boundaries. Family dynamics became a footnote in a contract review. That was new. A message came in from my son asking to meet. He arrived agitated, pacing the length of the room before sitting down. "This didn't have to happen," he said. "Explain." "They're worried about mixed signals, about you stepping in without a title." "I didn't step in." "That's not how it looks," he replied. Vanessa said the old structure creates confusion. There it was again, that phrase, old structure, as if stability were clutter. "She suggested you still pull strings," he continued, "that your hesitation costs momentum." "She suggested that I asked. She didn't mean it that way," he said quickly. She was trying to help. The pattern sharpened. Help framed as urgency. Concern framed as access. Later that afternoon, a smaller meeting took place without me. Vanessa attended. She spoke about adaptability, about modernizing leadership culture. When questions turned to the delayed deal, she offered context that sounded practiced. "Legacy influence can complicate clean execution," she said, according to notes forwarded afterward. "We're working through it. Legacy influence." The words traveled fast. By evening, a partner formally paused collaboration. Not terminated, just suspended. The reason cited governance clarity and potential conflicts tied to family involvement. The Hale name appeared more than once. The advantage I had carried quietly for years shifted. Stepping back had once been interpreted as trust. Now it looked like abdication. Silence no longer read as restraint. It read as consent. My son called again, voice tight. "They think you're the reason this fell apart," he said. "Who is they?" "Everyone who had to explain the pause," he answered. Vanessa included. I didn't respond right away. "You should have said something earlier," he added. "You can't disappear and then expect people to read your intentions." "I didn't disappear," I said. "I stayed out of the way." "That's the same thing," he replied. The call ended without resolution. Marcus met me later that night near his office. He listened, hands in his coat pockets, expression unchanged. "This crossed into exposure," he said, "not perception. Risk. That's what I was trying to avoid." "You avoided presence," he corrected, "not consequence." He didn't press further. There was nothing left to argue. Back at the apartment, the documents sat where I had left them. The internal request from Vanessa still showed as pending. Now it carried weight. Not granting it had slowed a deal. Granting it would have confirmed every assumption being made. The ethics were no longer theoretical. I opened a new message to legal. "Grant me full access to all filings and correspondence related to Vanessa Cole," I typed, including submissions made under advisory or family designation. The cursor hovered. This wasn't escalation for its own sake. It was acknowledgement. What had been framed as a misunderstanding had taken on measurable impact. Money paused. Reputations shifted. Decisions were being shaped without accountability. A reply came back quickly. "Understood." Looping compliance. Meetings began stacking without warning. Not the kind with agendas and minutes, but smaller rooms, shorter invites, conversations that ended before they felt finished. At headquarters then, at a law office a few blocks away. The same questions resurfaced, framed differently each time. Why did you step back when you did? What authority do you still exercise? Were there informal approvals we should know about? The answers hadn't changed. Titles had. I hadn't been in day-to-day control for years. The record showed that. Still, the responsibility drifted back toward me, carried by implication rather than fact. Vanessa showed up prepared. Not defensive. Polished. She spoke about optics, about reassuring partners, about the need to present a unified direction. Her proposal circulated quietly at first, a restructuring of the board's advisory layer, streamlined roles, clearer messaging. Stability, she called it. A few of the younger members nodded along. "She understands the market's sensitivity," one of them said. Another added, "Perception matters right now." Marcus sat beside me during one session, silent until it ended. "Notice how solutions arrive before accountability," he said as we stepped out. That's pressure dressed as progress. The pressure found its way home, too. My son stopped by one evening, pacing the room like he had weeks earlier, only faster this time. His phone buzzed twice before he turned it face down. "She's taking this hard," he said. "Which part?" I asked. "All of it," he replied. "She feels boxed out, like she's being punished for not having your last name. She's asking for access that isn't hers. She's asking to be trusted," he shot back. The conversation tightened. "She cried," he continued, voice lowering. "Said she's always treated like an outsider, that no matter what she does, she'll never belong." Emotion carried more weight than evidence in that moment. I could hear it pulling at him. "Did she mention the partner pause?" I asked. "She said it wouldn't have happened if you'd been clearer," he said. "If you'd backed the transition instead of hovering." Hovering. Another borrowed word. The option to step away completely presented itself more than once. Leave the structure intact. Let the next generation resolve its own mess. Protect the relationship that mattered most. That path promised less conflict, fewer meetings, fewer looks that questioned motive. It also promised risk. Legal memos arrived steadily, each one narrower than the last. Compliance flagged irregular access attempts. Not illegal. Premature. A note mentioned prior settlements surfacing during routine checks, though details were limited. Marcus called late one night. "This isn't a family issue anymore," he said. "It's exposure." "I know," I replied. "If you stay vague, you'll own whatever happens next," he added. "Even if you didn't cause it." The next board discussion turned sharper. Vanessa proposed accelerating the restructuring. Her language softened the edges, but the intent remained. Remove ambiguity, reassign influence, close the loop. Someone asked whether my position complicated things. Before I could answer, my son spoke. "He's still here," he said. "But not really." The room went still. That sentence did more damage than any allegation. It reframed everything I had tried to preserve. Distance turned into obstruction. Restraint into refusal. Afterward, I sat alone in the hallway while calls continued behind closed doors. The cost of staying silent had finally arrived. Not dramatic, just cumulative. A message from legal came through near midnight. Preliminary summary ready, it read. Flagged items attached. The document wasn't long. Dates, cross-references, notes about past disputes resolved without findings, patterns highlighted without commentary. Enough to reframe context, not enough to conclude guilt. I scrolled slowly, careful not to read more into it than existed. The facts stood on their own. Not personal. Not speculative. My son texted once more before the night ended. "She needs to know you're not trying to push her out." I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the summary to Marcus with a single line. "Next steps." The reply came back almost immediately. "Meet tomorrow." The full file arrived just after dawn. Not dramatic, no red flags stamped across the top, just a secure link and a note from compliance asking me to review carefully before the afternoon meeting. The first entry looked harmless, a consulting agreement that ended early. Then another. A short-term loan repaid through a third party. Each one small enough to be dismissed on its own. Together they formed a line that moved in one direction towards benefit, then away before questions could settle. What stood out wasn't scale, it was timing. Every dispute ended the same way. Settlement reached, case withdrawn, records sealed where possible, always before discovery, always before subpoenas. Hope surfaced uninvited, not relief. Just the possibility that what I had sensed wasn't paranoia, that something real sat beneath the tension. It vanished as quickly as it came. Any mistake now would be framed as retaliation. Any misstep would confirm the story already circulating that I was threatened by change. Vanessa learned about the review before I expected. Her lawyer called the company first, then me. "This process is inappropriate," he said. "My client believes she's being targeted. By whom?" I asked. "By you," he replied without hesitation. "Using influence you no longer hold." The accusation traveled fast. An email followed, then another. Language sharpened. References to abuse of legacy power. A request to halt all internal reviews pending external counsel. Marcus read through it later that morning, jaw set. "She's flipping the frame," he said. "From conduct to control." "That's effective?" I replied. "It can be," he said, "unless facts hold." The meeting took place in a private room at a hotel downtown. No windows, no staff beyond security. A limited group from the board attended along with legal advisors. Vanessa arrived last composed, accompanied by her attorney. My son followed close behind, eyes fixed on the table. No introductions were needed. I spoke first briefly. No speeches, no emphasis. Documents were shared, dates aligned, transactions outlined, settlements listed without interpretation. Vanessa listened without interruption. Hands folded. When her turn came, she stood and slid a folder across the table. "These matters were resolved years ago," she said, "legally and ethically." Her attorney added, each agreement included confidentiality clauses. No findings of wrongdoing. She didn't deny the events. She reframed them, explained circumstances, blamed misunderstandings, presented letters of reference that spoke to resilience and professionalism. One document carried particular weight, a release signed by a former partner, notarized clean. My son leaned forward. "So this is all old history?" he asked. "That's correct," Vanessa said, "and deeply personal." Silence followed. He turned toward me. "Are we really doing this?" he asked. "Dragging up things that were settled?" The room shifted. Momentum stalled. "I'm not drawing conclusions," I said, "only presenting patterns. That looks like judgment," he replied. Time was requested. Verification suggested. The board agreed to pause before taking action. Vanessa nodded as if patience proved innocence. As papers were gathered, one of the legal advisors cleared his throat. "There's a discrepancy we need to flag," he said. He pointed to a line item on one of Vanessa's documents. A registration number. Minor. Almost invisible. "It doesn't match federal records," he added. "Probably clerical?" "Probably." Vanessa stiffened for the first time. "That's impossible," she said. "That document has been used before," noted, the advisor replied. "We'll confirm." The meeting adjourned without resolution. No votes, no decisions, just delay thick and unsettled. In the hallway, my son caught up with me. "She feels attacked," he said. "I know," I replied. "You didn't have to push this far." "I didn't push," I said. I responded. He shook his head, frustration breaking through. "You always say that." Vanessa passed us without a glance phone already pressed to her ear. Back at the apartment, Marcus called. "They're pulling federal data now," he said. "If that number's off, it's not clerical." I sat at the table, the legal summary still open, now marked with a single highlight. One line, one digit. The confirmation came through before noon. Not a call. A secure message forwarded from Marcus with 2 attachments and a short note. "Federal records don't align. It's not a typo." The discrepancy traced back further than expected. A registration number reused across entities that were supposed to be separate. Filings adjusted just enough to pass surface checks. Nothing dramatic, just repetition, enough to suggest intent rather than accident. Marcus met me later that day with printouts spread across a small table. He didn't need to explain much. The pattern spoke for itself. She didn't forget, he said. She omitted. That distinction mattered. Forgetting could be excused. Omitting required choice. Something settled then, not relief. Clarity. The need to manage how this looked faded. Reputation stopped being the priority. Accuracy took its place. The board convened again within 48 hours. This time invitations were narrower. Legal counsel present. Compliance seated closer. 2 partners joined by phone, their participation cautious. Vanessa arrived with the same composure she had worn for weeks. Her attorney followed, briefcase in hand. My son took a seat beside her, posture, stiff eyes forward. I didn't open the discussion. The chair did. We need clarification, he said. Final clarification. Documents circulated. Federal confirmations highlighted. Dates cross-referenced. The earlier settlements reappeared, now connected by structure rather than circumstance. I spoke only when asked. These aren't isolated events, I said. They're sequenced. Vanessa shook her head. This is a mischaracterization, she said. You're taking unrelated matters and forcing a narrative. Her attorney leaned in. There's no conviction here, he said. No finding of wrongdoing. No, I replied. There's risk. That word shifted the room. One of the partners spoke through the speaker. We can't proceed with uncertainty at this level, he said. Not with pending exposure. Vanessa turned toward my son. Tell them, she said. Tell them this isn't who I am. He hesitated. The pause lasted longer than any argument could have. She pressed harder. You know me, she said. You know what this is. He looked at the documents again. Then at the dates. Then at me. Something in his expression changed, not all at once, but enough. This keeps happening, he said slowly. Different places. Same outcome. Her face tightened. That doesn't mean anything, she said. People try to take advantage, every time he asked. Silence followed. Not agreement, recognition. Vanessa's tone shifted. The softness dropped. This is your doing, she said, pointing at me. You couldn't stand losing control. No one interrupted her. That too mattered. I didn't respond. The chair cleared his throat. We're suspending all considerations related to board involvement, he said. Effective immediately. The vote followed. Not unanimous. Decisive enough. Access was revoked. Accounts frozen pending review. Partners confirmed the pause would remain until matters resolved externally. Vanessa stood abruptly. You're making a mistake, she said. You'll regret this. No one answered. My son remained seated, hands folded, eyes down. When the room emptied, he stayed behind. I didn't see it, he said. You weren't meant to, I replied. He nodded once. No defense, no anger, just the weight of delayed understanding. Vanessa's lawyer sent a message later that evening demanding reinstatement, threatening action. Legal acknowledged receipt, nothing more. At home, the apartment felt the same as it had all along. The table still crowded with paper. The phone, finally, still. Marcus called once more. This part's over, he said. The rest moves slower. I know, I replied. The process moved without spectacle. Notices went out. Access ended. Calendars adjusted. The engagement dissolved through attorneys, not conversations. Vanessa's name disappeared from agendas and distribution lists, then from introductions. Partners acknowledged the pause would remain. Compliance logged the file for ongoing review. Nothing happened all at once, and that made it final. There was no last meeting, no request to explain. She didn't call. Her lawyer did once to coordinate the return of documents and devices. After that, the line went silent. Social ties unraveled faster than expected. Invitations stopped. Calls weren't returned. People who had leaned close weeks earlier now preferred distance. The city has a way of enforcing conclusions without commentary. My son came by a few days later carrying a box he hadn't packed carefully. He set it near the door and stood there longer than necessary. "I'm moving," he said. "Where?" I asked. "Closer to work," he replied. "For now." We sat at the table with nothing between us. No agenda, no urgency. "I should have asked harder questions," he said, "earlier." "You trusted someone you loved," I said. "That's not a flaw." He nodded but didn't look up. "We'll need to unwind a few things," he added. "Accounts, leases, I'll help you find counsel," I said. "The rest you can handle?" He agreed without argument. Responsibility had finally settled where it belonged. The distance that followed wasn't dramatic. We spoke when there was something to address. Not every day. Not to reassure each other. That felt appropriate. Repair doesn't always arrive as closeness. Sometimes it shows up as space that isn't hostile. I didn't try to narrate what had happened to him or to anyone else. The temptation passed quickly. Silence had cost us before. This time it was chosen with clarity, not avoidance. Work returned to its usual cadence. Meetings shortened. Decisions landed cleaner. The scholarship fund I had left untouched for years resurfaced on my calendar. I asked for a review of its structure and expanded the criteria beyond what I had originally set. Not out of guilt, out of accuracy. The world had changed. So had the needs it presented. Marcus stopped by once unannounced, carrying a thin folder. "Loose ends," he said. "We went through them efficiently. No speculation, no postmortems. Anything else?" he asked when we finished. "No," I said. "That's enough." He smiled once, brief and unremarkable, then left. I began taking time I had postponed for too long. Early mornings without calls, afternoons set aside without explanation, commitments chosen rather than inherited. None of it felt like escape, more like alignment. Packing for a short trip took less effort than expected. A change of clothes. A book I had meant to read years earlier. I left the apartment as I always had lights off table cleared. The city continued on its schedule. At the airport, a message came through from my son. "Thanks for handling things the way you did." I read it twice. Didn't reply immediately. Some acknowledgments don't need an answer. The plane boarded on time. I took my seat, stowed the bag, and settled back as the aisle cleared. The screen dimmed. The announcement came and went. As we lifted off, I didn't look for a view. The movement was enough. Not to get away from anything, but to let what had already ended stay ended, and to carry forward only what had earned its place.